We consider this cartel
Peace, family. Yeah, basically, I wanted to touch bases with y'all, because I was getting a lot of complaints about audio quality and video quality and stuff like that, and I just wanted y'all to know that I actually complained to the House of Ram, basically letting them know about the stoppages in the videos and stuff like that, because we need all of this information. It's too important to basically you know, half-ass this information, and I'm not discrediting the House of Ram because they do a wonderful job by getting this information out to the people, but it's a problem with the camera, and I've been getting a lot of complaints, so I took it. I want y'all to know that I took it straight to them more than once, you know what I'm saying, but I was told that they're aware of the problem and they're working on it, so that's all we can do is just, we got to deal with it until they're able to get a new camera or whatever. But this is the comments. It was actually more, but they told me basically they had no control, over what was going on as far as with the transmission. And I understand that because the internet connections are shaky sometimes. So y'all gotta understand that. Just pay attention, because I noticed once, when the videos do stop, they do pick up from where they left off. They don't leave out no information. So you gotta kind of bear with that until the House of Ram is able to fix that problem. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'm definitely gonna keep this coming. I'm gonna keep these Taj videos coming, Moorish videos coming, and Nuwabian videos coming. And if the Israelites are saying something that's interesting, I keep those coming. I'm for uniting the people. It shouldn't be no separation, because we're all one human family. So let me let y'all get to this lecture. I don't want to talk y'all to death. This is Taj Tarik Bey's lecture. So I'm gonna let this go on. It's applied science of the number 9. So now my news present Taj Tarik Bey, applied science of the number 9. Okay, from Taj Tarik Bey and the Moorish perspective. You know what I'm saying? Because the number 9 is deep. That's why this channel is Now My News. Okay? Peace, family. Enjoy.
You good?
Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to the House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight we welcome once again our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam. Thank you for coming out here to the House of Reawakening Minds. One of the things that we need to recognize, because we've gone, most of the things that are cultural and related to us, we've gone over at one time or another. But I think a lot of times some things are gathered, information is gathered and not used. So sometimes you have to be redundant about certain things. And so these questions, we're going to go through these questions. We're going to read through them, and then we'll go back and go over them. Can you scroll down, as we go through this? Mm-hmm. Now, these are questions that every national Moor of the land of America should be able to answer with clarity, forethought, and knowledge. Use your common sense and reasoning when contemplating these questions. 1. Are the fundamental operative principles and structures upon which governments of nations are based rooted upon matriarchy or upon patriarchy? 2. Why are there social and political codes imposed upon the peoples of North America and the world designed, scroll down, designed to promote contention between women and men? 3. Are you familiar with the names of the 12 homeopathic cell salts, which are also called tissue salts, which are made from the 12 minerals found in the human tissue? Some of the forms of these minerals are calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium, silica, and sodium. What human organ uses the 12 minerals to construct the temples, bodies of the species? 5, does the observance of the workings of nature reveal keys to the knowledge of the workings of government? 6, why are these facts of nature and government not taught in the schools at North America? 7, what can be done to assist the families of the natural peoples of the land who have suffered and are still suffering from miseducation, scroll down, and the demo promotion of the bishopric order of Rome and their self-promoting godship? What is the applied science of the number 9? 9, can a nation rise above the woman of that nation? These things should be contemplated because many times we come together, we're looking at discussing different problems that we suffer in society, and we have all kinds of meetings and figuring out all kinds of stuff to try to fix things without recognizing that there's certain fundamentals in nature and in government structure that many of our people have not been aware of in recent generations. Not that our people haven't been aware of them. These are principles that our people have lost generations ago, and has much to do as to why and how the Romans are operating on the planet, and has been key to their success. The keys to their success has been our failures to maintain the culture of our forefathers. And a lot of times you'll hear people talking about the Asiatic culture, you know, the ancient cultures of the Asiatic world, and boasting about the pyramids, you know, here in North America, in old central Mexico, you know, Mexico, where the largest pyramids in the world were in Mexico, and many of our pyramids here are older than the pyramids on the other side in Hikupta that we call Egypt. And you'll see very often people go into the history and bring data and make pictures demonstrating the greatness of Asia and Africa, of the ancient world, but yet the cultural scientific practices of our forefathers that ran government and kingdoms and empires for actually decades, decades of millennia, if you know, compound. And the sciences that were key to lengthy government were generally lost, you know. And so it's another reason why we're going into the applied science of the number 9. And we're not going to go into details because we're just making points. And some things we want you to do some research on, and some things we will refine later. Because any one of these points you could, you know, do a book on, literally. But a synopsis would be of great import, because if you use your common sense, you can start putting some things together. And the major point that I'm making is for us to start considering our thoughts and our considerations of how we think government is, what we think it is, who governs you, why they govern you, what government is, what it is not. All these things affect us every day. And yet, very often when we get into the normalities of our everyday lives, where we are extracted, taxes are extracted from us, people are claiming jurisdiction in your affairs, the corporate states are stealing your properties, the IRS comes after your estates or accounts that you thought were yours, that they actually tricked you into making you think you had accounts that were actually theirs, things like that. And many of the things that we suffer every day and seek remedy to, we are limited because we don't understand government. And also because the governing bodies that we assume to be government are actually criminal operations that are de facto and operating as government, including the fact that they're out of harmony with nature. Are we clear? Not just, how would you say, anti-humane, and antisocial, they're also out of harmony with nature. And this is another reason why it's important to understand the applied science of the number 9. Now, the politics at North America is deliberately run on a patriarchal system who secretly maintain a matriarchal principle. That might sound the body of politics that operated North America, i.e. the Roman, European, foreign, alien colonists who have been pretending to be Americans for a couple hundred years now and have been corrupting the whole planet. And since they've been here in North America, they've annihilated and made extinct 60% of the species of life. It may be more than that. And so the problems that we have as a people of the land in North America is not limited to us, it's not limited just to us. It's also plant life and the other forms of life on our land that they've made extinct. You know, so it's not only a matter of misgoverning and corrupt governing, there are actually what you would call colors, and that's C-U-L-L-E-R. Murderers, thieves, extortioners, and basically sadistic in nature of their governing. And most of the problems that we have politically and economically are related to activities coming from persons claiming to be government. To some degree is the fact that they have systematically and to some great degree destroyed the culture of the people, and the people have adopted actually the Roman bishopric dead culture and thinking it's their own, if you get the point. And so, you know, it's sort of like after a while, when people are beat down so much, sometimes they can get the idea that they have no power. When the real reality is that they don't understand the power, or they have a lack of knowledge of what the power is. So the point that I'm making with this is, we go back to the top. Let's go back to the top. And I want to interchange with you, and feel free to exercise your general thoughts. Just talk. Because usually when you just look at something and you just consider something and you start talking, a lot of times the things that come to your mind is really the answers. But we doubt ourselves very often. And so know this, the questions are not loaded. They're not intended to be loaded. All right, they're just based on fundamental. But I'll say this to you. How many of you been to Washington, D.C. and seen that all-marble building called the Daughters of the American Revolution? The stairs are marble, everything is marble. And they have the brass plaque in there relative to the original origin for the United States with the small u. All right. Daughters of the American Revolution, how many of you have ever, I know here, like as an example, Marcus Mosiah Garvey taught civics and structural government. And our illustrious prophet Noble Ali always referenced Marcus Garvey for us to study also, because Noble Ali taught government and he taught civics. And the Moorish Temple of Science, the Old Canaanite Temple and the Moorish Temple of Science, also known as the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, was registered as a civic organization in 1925. So for most of the life of the prophet in his work at North America with restoring the nation, etc., and bringing back the consciousness of our nationality and our birthrights, was civic. And until 1928, he adopted a religious affidavit in 1928, 1 year before they assassinated him. But yet, you'll find that many people really don't understand civics. And it's interesting, you know, because upon a test, you'll find that these words are thrown around, but the knowledge amongst the people is limited, which means they are not being taught. The other deal of it is what I've noticed, and I think anybody that's honest with themselves when they study the conditions of our people, you will discover quickly that many people who talk about nationhood and government, in fact, don't teach civics. They just make these statements, you know what I mean, because everybody's saying it. You know what I mean? But if you test them in fundamental civics, they don't have it. But then, at the same time, when you go into the metaphysics of civics, they really don't have it. This is why we're bringing this up, are we clear? Because if you go to the root of the problem, the other stuff kind of falls in place. It's like common sense. It's really not complex. All right? So, our fundamental operative principles and structures upon which governments of nations are based, rooted upon matriarchy or patriarchy. Anybody? Give them a mic. Give them a mic. I want you to participate. Because I have to draw from your mind, and keep this in mind, you know, as we, travel the country and deal with different people over the years, you know, you'll see people coming from what you call different schools of thought, and with all due respect, they'll have, bring up a lot of data and a lot of knowledge, but they keep demonstrating that they really don't understand nationhood. But you keep hearing people saying, and I'm not criticizing them, I'm just observing what's broken, you know. And so I also recognize that while we sometimes will give civic tests, you know what I mean, in some form or another, even when we started years ago, you know, teaching or demonstrating the principles of jurisdiction or processes in courts, etc., or challenging jurisdiction, right? That's related to kind of what you call preserving the rights of the being in an organized government structure. Most people just think court, you know, that court is a building where you're challenging jurisdiction or something like that, and that's not really where it begins. It's really in society itself. But at the same time, fundamentals should be understood about the jurisdiction. Now, present it this way. A question that can be presented to you to give you in the frame of mind of where we're trying to get you to look at is this question. And think this in your mind while you're looking at these questions. Who is your mother? I'll repeat. Who is your mother? All right? And if you keep that in your mind while you're looking at anything in government or in civics, it will give you a clearer understanding of keeping your head clear when someone's trying to guide you one way or another in government or trying to claim something of you or from you. When you forget that, it's easier to trick you. That might not sound relative to you, but it is everything to you. Are we clear? So organically and by nature, let's just keep it simple. How many of you got a belly button? All right, there is no opinion in that, is it? No. There is no yay or nay in that, is it? Whatever, if someone has a bias about what their beliefs are or what religion they think they got, whatever, it can't stand against that fact, can it? That's 100%, isn't it? However, almost everything else we claim can be questioned, can it? But yet that simple question that I just presented to you and that simple statement, most people would never look at it like that, would they? It never dawned on them, would it? Consider this. How many versions of the different gods do people have on the planet? How many versions of the same God do people have on the planet? How many sects are in every religion on the planet? And how many people in the same families argue with each other about their gods and their views on gods, about the other God that they had before they got the new God? A whole bunch of evil things in the name of love, in the name of whatever we say this week. And then after people get frustrated, a couple years, and then they change that up again, and this is where you get all your secularism and religion, right? Now, and this is why they say, often say, if you want a peaceful society, don't ever bring up politics or religion. Why? Because both of them have been corrupted. Yet most people don't want to admit it. And because they don't want to admit it, they never really analyze everything out to clear anything up. Therefore, you have a whole bedrock of dishonesty, unsurety, trepidation, toxic self-righteousness, and very little cure. Do you understand? Now, that's not condemning religion, because most people don't get religion, and misrepresenting the divine order. And it's usually people that's arguing about religion or promoting religion that usually murder prophets, who are usually used as a tag or a front for the businesses of men who have been creating more bloodshed on the planet than the armies, the regular armies of the earth, in the name of gods, that they keep switching up every, here and there. And that's not to condemn, it's just to observe the mathematical facts. Meaning that if you're fixing something, the one thing that you must do, if you're honest to yourself, is to just simply look at the facts and let the facts tell you what is, if you get the point. Now, fact of the matter is, we got a lot of problems on this planet. Fact of the matter is, no man, no woman can argue that they don't have a belly button. And we know it's a navel, but we're keeping it, mundane and keeping it simple so that people's feelings don't get hurt. So let's look at how things operate. If you go into the insect kingdom, or into the animal kingdom on any level, you will see whether it is an ovoid or egg, or whether it's live birth, that the builder of that body of any species is feminine, i.e. its mother. Is that not true? Now, can anyone argue that? However, to protect if you cannot acknowledge the foot that you stand on and the earth that you stand on, how can you acknowledge what's on the other side of Venus? How can you claim a God that you do not see and not love or claim your brothers and sisters whom you see by the day? It does not make one absent of the other. It is just to acknowledge that we keep claiming to have an understanding about things that we don't have an understanding about. That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying that most people don't have the guts to say what I just said, because what I just told you is absolutely true. And if we were more honest with each other, the world would be a better place. And it'd be less misery on this planet. However, on the front of the matter, the deal of it is the devil didn't go and garnish your account. The devil didn't go and come in your community and gentrify your community and steal your grandmother's house that should have been passed to you, that should have been passed to your child, while many of you are struggling to try to live your mother, and therefore she has the right to your life or your government. That's how government works. Because whoever says that they're your government are saying they're your mother. So the question is, who's your mother? So that's called jurisdiction. Who has first power? Let's deal with reality. Now, males come from female eggs, right? These are facts of nature. So all eggs are female. Whatever the process is, although we observe it, the truth of the matter is they don't know how it's done. Now, this is the truth, right? But the female species takes certain of her daughter eggs and convert them into males in order to perpetrate, or you can say perpetrate, that's maybe not a good choice of words, promote the species. Because that's the truth, right? So the fact of the matter is, in the examination of any species on the planet, that the male species has a stronger body in certain ways, but he does not have all the faculties that his mother has, because she promotes life itself. As an example, we have nipples up here, right? Them suckers don't work, ain't never affect nobody. You know, sensitive of it, we should be acknowledged and honor our mothers for bringing us here. Now, key, why is it that the codes, the social and political codes imposed upon the peoples of North America and the world, designed to promote contention between men and women? It is so that you don't pay attention to the nature facts of your existence. Most of the time, if someone makes the statements that I make very often, blunt and just honest statements, people get mad at you because it upsets the apple cart, because it's not how people play this game. It's not, oh, you're not supposed to, oh, please, no, don't do that, don't say that, that's unlordly, and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's the truth. Is there really a desire to solve the problems of humanity, or is there not? Fact of the matter is, observe nature and the workings of nature and harmonize with nature, and most of your problems you solve by common sense. But we've gotten away from it because we have listened to both the priesthood and the bishopric and condemned nature as if the creator of this thing didn't make nature. Contradiction. This is the danger of beliefs without study. Are we clear? Beliefs aren't bad. They're, good things for children, for starters and stuff like that. But when children grow up, they should be getting the science of life. Now, point, and cutting through the chase. The real deal of it is, the reason why the social codes and political codes are set forth to create contention between men and women, which we suffer from in this society, definitely. It is so that you disrespect not only each other, but they can control your family. Because at any time you start looking at each other, blaming each other for problems, and you don't pay attention to the third party in the background. As an example, this is a true example. In fact, how many people, and this is fact, know that marriage license are a bank bond? Now, fact, how many people know, well, you can come to the House of Weird Awakening Minds. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, I know y'all know that. But in general, even family members, how many people know that, and how many people in general everyday life, did it ever even cross their minds? The general concept is that it is a holy nuptial contract between God and the holiness of matrimony, of the beauty of love, of godness. And it's a bank bond. Not only that, with that instrument, the Pope of Rome and the clergy, bishopric of the world, claims the uterus and the eggs in the uterus from life to death. Do any of these clergy tell these people this? No. When they file that certificate down at Vital Statistics and it goes to 55 Water Street, New York, and goes on the stock market? So the question is, who's your mother? Key. The contention and the contentions that are promoted between men and women. Go ahead, Dr. Knight.
I wanted to count back on what you just said about how we know. I just want to read from Exodus 34:19, King James Version.
Yes.
All that openeth the matrix, which we know is
matrix means womb.
Womb, because in the other translations, womb is mine. And every first thing among thy cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male. So what it really says is speaking as mine. That's
this must be put into context, in the political context, because we're talking about the politics of North America, right? And we're talking about the politics of North America, not necessarily because it began at North America, but the heart of its operations, or the enforcement of it. The enforcement. Not necessarily all of the policy, but the enforcement is rooted and exercised from North America, geographically. Are we clear? In other words, the war machine to keep it going operates from North America. Are we clear? Not from the people of the land, but those who are occupying the land who are actually alien. Are we clear? That must be clear from day one. Are we clear? Now, repeat that, Dr. Naila, because I want people to absorb what you just said. Just go from your mind, because I like it better when it comes from your mind, because you actually have a better explanation than a lot of stuff that you read.
Well, it just basically says that all that open, everything that's born is mine.
Now,
so there's jurisdiction.
Now, the popes of Rome, with their unum sanctum policy, declared themselves God. The same Romans, this is allegorical, that murdered the prophets, right? Declared themselves God. And upon that principle is the operations of the Inquisition, led, guided principle. That is their manual. The Crusades, based on that same principle. The colonization of the Western world, or the Maghreb, is based absolutely on that principle of Rome claiming themselves as God. Another word they will use for that claim, this is their claim, vicar, means a substitute for the Christ that they've been teaching to the world. They murdered him, and they put themselves in this place and claimed all the powers that were implied in all the books of all the prophets and of the creative principle of God, of fathership and mothership on this planet. And this is the root of what is called the Inquisition hegemony, or what modern people call, who don't know all the history, white supremacy. And this is where their attitude comes from, this is where their policies come from, and this is where their governing principles come from. Key. When you're looking at one of the allegorical stories in the Septuagint, or in the Bible, where Herod was murdering the firstborn, do you know what that represents? Do you have an idea what that represents? Just feel free to talk. What it represents is their consciousness of the women who were conscious of the applied science of the number 9 to kill off any champions that she might bring. Because that's what cures the world. So they must kill the culture so she doesn't know the power of her womb. And those among our own, also known as conversos, who assist the Romans, have done everything they can to promote Constantinianism under the name of Christianity. And those who were contaminated with them did as much as they could do to infiltrate those principles into Islam and into the Western world, which is why we are in disorder. Now, that's the truth. But do you know how many people will deny what I just said, although everything I said is provable fact, to protect their images of men and women who they idolize rather than looking at the science itself? Are we clear? Now, this is the deal. Pardon me. Scroll up, please. Are you familiar with the names of the 12 homeopathic cell salts?
No.
Give them a mic. I want them to participate, please. Somebody. You got the mic. Good. Read. Read number 3 and give us something.
Are you familiar with the names of the 12 homeopathic salts, which are also tissue salts, which are made from the 12 minerals found in the human body tissue? Some of the forms of these minerals are calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium, silica, and sodium.
All right. Now, what do you have to say about that?
Some of these minerals is actually found in our body.
Say it again.
Some of these minerals are found in our body.
All of them are. And then more. Now, point of it is, now read number 4.
What human organ tissues the 12 minerals to construct the temples, parentheses, bodies of the species?
Now I'm going to make this point here, and I want you to relate that to this conversation, right? How often do you see this while people keep talking about our Hotep culture, our so-called African culture, Asiatic culture? That's what's used to do this. But that culture is not related when they be wearing these things, are they?
No.
They don't bring them up together, do they?
No.
Well, see, in Egypt and stuff, and you got the Ankh and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And then the kente cloth and stuff.
And then start beating drums. Their own land, but we're extremely Afrocentric. And then logically, children growing up, they're kind of enjoying the event and stuff, but they have no idea and hypocritical. Not because they intended to be, because they're really not studying. They're studying imagery without the culture. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They don't make the connection. And it's not that it's not always a deliberate thing. It's more deliberate with the leadership than it is with the with the believers or the people that are in the audience. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. Another one is this. Cosmo, crescent in the star. How many of them give them that science? That's the moon. And that's Venus. What does that have to do with this? Fertility and fecundity. What does that have to do with the economy on the earth? It deals with the growth patterns of the plants to feed humanity. The patterns of the waves of the water, the beating of your heart, and the blood flow, and the rhythm, and the cycles of all life systems. It's not just something that that you just worship. This is a science of life itself. Problem. People have gotten, because of I'm hesitant to say it, but it's what it is. Less than honorable leadership who keep promoting the imagery of these things without teaching the science, while collecting finances, or what you call stealing the widow's pennies, and watching generations be destroyed because they have the beauty of the images of life cycle without the teaching behind it, and therefore the people are powerless and suffer from wicked leaders and a wicked priesthood who murder all the prophets. That's why they murder the prophets, because they don't want the science out, because they would be removed immediately. And the politics at North America suffers because the people don't know this science. However, you start teaching this science to these little girls, as soon as they before they're 9, start telling them the truth. You know, I say the birds and the bees. Because what is the issue of the birds and the bees really? The birds and the bees is essentially, the bird symbolizes height and flight, and symbolizes spirituality. It symbolizes. The bees symbolize like the candles that are used in all ceremonies, because the wax comes from the thorax of the bee. That is its source, its only source. So the wax that is used around the world comes from bees. Not only that, bees are a demonstration of governing. Bees are a demonstration of the mysteries of the conversion of the eggs of the queen, all females, being fed royal honey to just specific ones, chosen ones, that turn them to drones, which are males, to promote the species. So to understand nature of life is to understand self. Are we clear? And the fact of the matter is, when you understand the nature of life itself, the throne, if you want to symbolize a throne in a beehive, there's only one throne, it's the queen. Now, so for the priesthood to rule the planet, they have to kill the knowledge of nature in the minds of the people. Are we clear? Dr. Naim?
Islam.
Get that sister a mic quickly. We're going to get 3 mics. We got to get enough.
Mentioning the beehive, it's interesting that the priesthood at some point, they used to wear brass type helmet, I don't know what they were called, things on their head that resembled like a beehive.
Well, that's called a mitre, a square.
Well, yeah, the mitre.
Yes.
That resembled like a beehive.
No, because it does. Because it does.
So would that be their, as you were saying, trying to
They maintain
assume a position that belonged to
exactly.
the matriarchal category that
Because
they
it is.
Okay.
Now, let's look. Now that you bring that up. All right, in Islam, there's an honor to the matriarchy when we wear jalab, or what you would think is a skirt type thing, right? That's in honor of the matriarchy, your mother. You know, that doesn't take away your masculinity, but these are true realities of symbolism in nature that are reflected in religion, but not taught necessarily by those who guide people in religion, because they don't want them to know the origin of these things. Are we clear? It's sort of because they want to keep that contention between males and females, keep us fighting, mad at each other about dumb stuff. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And then also to promote the mysteries of the power of the masculine, or the patriarchy. This is also why the bishopric of Rome, they always wear the long dress garb. All right? Oh, you got to understand this stuff. Now, if you don't understand the science, or if you're caught in the dogmata promoted by the priesthood, people are threatened by this information. They reject the information not because it's not true, because they think they're going to lose their marbles. You're, oh damn, I lost my marbles. You're rolling down the street and stuff, and they, you know, all that comes. These people is really, they get strange. Put it that way. Truth is sometimes uncomfortable for a lot of people. However, our issue here at the House of Reawakening Mind is solving problems. It's not, you know, our job is helping to uplift the fallen humanity, not pushing them deeper, you know. However, we also, you know, would desire and recommend that people, you know, take their egos and put them in their back pocket and just study divine nature, what Allah has created. Because everything that is here is there for you to see if you would observe. And actually, if you would actually study nature, and if you study allegory in Islam, you know, the science, you would understand this stuff anyway. But what's happened is because so many evil people have come into the orders of religion around the planet, they've actually put the world into a dark state of evil. You know, so you will not find hardly any people in any so-called name of religion that's not only ain't fighting somebody else, they fighting each other. And they say this is Allah, this is the creator. They're full of crap. You know, and the other deal of this, in order to maintain that corruption, they will not teach the science. Are we clear? Because if you study the science, most of that other stuff would just fall by the wayside, because you would see, you know, it's sort of like knowledge dispels ignorance. If the common people were given back the knowledge of the ancient ones without the BS, they would, much of the destruction that takes place amongst the humans, all the hatred, the divisions, the wars and everything, would pretty much end overnight. Other deal. If women, and this is true, not contaminated, I'm going to qualify this, not contaminated by what is presented to the world as religion, were governing, most of the wars would stop overnight too. Now, that's the truth. Why? Because mother's natural compassion for her offspring would go before some political gain. Problem. Constantinian order of culture, a lot of that natural compassion culture that actually destroys her own family. Has more to do with a lack of knowledge than really her nature. And in the nature of that, actually, subconsciously runs most of her men away. Many of the Asiatics in North America, and this is a whole nother area of study, if you really study us, because it's not discussed, right? The subtle nature of knowing. The subtle nature of knowing with most males, like I'm talking to you brothers, one of the major problems that are not discussed that we have with our women is where they put the church and reverend before us, but yet we have to pay the bills, type thing. And we have to submit to that. And we always feel like we're halfway out of the door. And then Rome was always threatening to take our children or pushing us out the house type thing. And so after a while, after a few generations, we kind of disattached. And then it creates a division between us that's really artificial, and we start blaming each other instead of Christian black codes, which are in operation, that come from the bishopric of Rome. And we ain't looking at Rome, we're looking at each other and wondering why our relationships don't work. And all of this is done by the priesthood and by the women forgetting their own culture of that womb. Now, let's look at this. It's kind of scribbly, but best I can do. This is the uterus. About 28 days, about 2 hours, roughly, and roughly around 50 minutes. It varies. It's according to the epigee and the apogee of the moon. One of these eggs, from the left or the right fallopian tube, will go up and sit. There are a couple of them, usually a couple of them, but most of the time it's one. And then this birth canal, right? This is where the steeple, you see steeples in the churches or the pyramids or the obelisk, which is a penis, really, is an electrical charge. Electrical charge will stimulate one of them eggs, and that egg goes and sits up here in the uterus. And that's why it's referred to the star of man. Wow. And that's governed by the womb, by the moon that has a cycle around the earth, behind the earth, as the earth spirals behind the sun in 12 cycles, it cycles 13 cycles. All right? And that is rotationary cycle. And it also governs the womb, and it governs the tides. Are we clear? Right. And that's also symbolized by Cosmo. Are we clear? Clear. Now, also, Cosmo symbolizes the vernal equinoxes, or the equinoxes of the sun. This is how, like, if you read Asiatic African texts for real, what is it that adepts know that all these so-called priests know that they don't teach the masses? We measure time by cycle ages. And that's the cycle of the planets, the equinoxes of the sun, ephemerides. And the womb, and woman in the womb is a walking calendar. So why is it that so much effort is made to suppress women? You know, when people live in a culture where women are minimized, sometimes the men start thinking that they're part of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're not part of that. That's Rome's order, to suppress you. To suppress your mother is to suppress you. For you to agree with their operations is to suppress yourself. It's called fratricide. And for him, it's success in his genocide operations. And this is what the Spanish Inquisition is all about. The genocide of the Moors. The Moors and Yahudi. They say Moors and Jews, but ain't no such thing as Jew. It's really Yahudi. Jew is what the Europeans call themselves after they took over the Yetta when they ran the Moors out of Al-Andalus. Yeah. You know, so, because there's no J in Hebrew, there's no J in Aramaic. You know, it's Yahudi. Yahudi, actually, those of us who crossed over, really. It's not even a belief system. So, when you see them promoting all that stuff as a belief system, they're lying their pieces off. These are just dynasties and periods of times and degrees of knowledge in the culture. That's the fact. Jew is one that holds the highest degree of knowledge, basically. And that's false in that sense, if you get the point. If you get the point. Now, so when you see the that breastplate of 12 jewels that the high priest would wear, you have each jewel that represent each one of them 12 salts that represent each one of those 12 cycles of the earth spiraling after the sun, while the moon spirals around the earth in a cone shape. Not on the disc shape, in a cone shape. Are we clear? This is why when they have them fights, they have symbolic fights in South America, mainly in Granada and different places, representing the Constantinians fighting the Moors. The Constantinians always call themselves Christians. They're not Christians, they're Constantinians. You understand what I'm saying to you? And they'll wear the cone, that cone, and just like you'll see the Ku Klux Klan, they'll wear that cone. That represents, because that belongs to you, that belongs to them. Our people don't even know their own history. That's your own stuff. They're scaring our people with their own stuff. You know, so again, you must really, really, really study the science of the allegories that are presented in the name of religion and not be afraid to start looking at things honestly. Because most of our people, when you get into this information, are afraid to be honest and are afraid to look at things rationally. But they never calculate, or they often do not calculate. Why are their lives so miserable? Why are their families so broken? Why are they so put upon by these foreign Europeans successfully claiming to be Americans who they're not? But yet these people keep claiming to be so spiritual. Our arrogance is so deep that we can't even see our hypocrisy, that it does not harmonize with truth. In other words, how can you keep failing and be in truth? How can everything that you do 90% be wrong and negative and destructive and be truth? How can people from around the world come into the North Gate, into North America, and be successful, and you be the people of the land, and you're always at the tail end of everything, and you supposedly have the truth, but yet you won't look at something different and reconsider your affairs? Meaning that if it's cold outside, and as an example, if the window is broken and your brother says, I'm a carpenter, you know, servant is worthy of his hire. Hire me and I'll fix your window. But next year, we're still here, sitting here, feeding you and paying you, and you're telling us keep hope alive, but the wind is still blowing over here, and everybody got blankets on after a year. And now it's 2, and now it's 3, and then we say, Mr. Carpenter, how cometh the door is breezy? I don't think that they duped so much by the priesthood that they're afraid to even respect divine common sense. that you cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again and only meet failure 90% of the time and be correct or be spiritual or be divine in any format of what you're doing. And yet, most of them will never reconsider their position or look at anything different than what they've been doing. Why I say this? For the few who have the courage to start looking at things for what they are, not what someone presents to them as a belief, but what is provable, right? The bodies, because these are called temples of the soul of man. Now, Solomon is an allegory, right? They'll do M-O-N and M-A-N. And they'll talk about Solomon's temple. That's an allegorical story. And when you go into the Kabbalistic instruction, it is also symbolized by the equilateral pyramid with a 120-degree angle at each point, which equals 360 degrees, but also equals man, or the manifest, or that which is constructed in that uterus, the temple of man, which is actually the body. Ourselves, the body of Christ. But they don't ever explain it to you that you're simply talking about the building of the body with the holy womb. And when they're saying the holy womb, that means the uncontaminated womb. That means when a woman's mind is uncontaminated, she builds the best bodies. Are we clear? This is why the high priests who really know how the workings of nature take place always seek to kill the firstborn. What they really mean is, when they find women who are knowledgeable of who they are, the church murders them, calls them a witch, and steals their estates and splits it between the church and the state. And they've been doing that, and that's how the church got wealthy in the Western Hemisphere. Provable fact. To discourage them from the knowledge of their forefathers. And so gradually our women got away from the culture and lost consciousness of the womb's use. Then, with the promotion of the Roman order, we started using sex for just gratification. And that's where you get the gratification of the lower self. And this is also where you get the harmonic or the disharmonic bodies or the temples. And this is why you have so many psychological problems with the offspring. It's the workings of nature. How do you fix it? Study the salts. Study the cycles of cosmos. Study cosmos operations of the Ankh or the womb. Study the nature of the 12 constellations and the salts that correlate with them. And build your bodies accordingly. It's called family planning. Now tell me that's not true. Let anybody tell you that according to the cycle of the moon, that when women are going to release that seed, if it's not germinated, don't she spot for like 7 days? Oh, is that belief or is that fact?
Fact.
How come women, out of lack of information and lack of knowledge and lack of belief in the divine order of herself, let these Romans give her drugs when all she needed to do was time herself by the moon? She doesn't even believe in herself anymore. This is how Rome is ruling you. Are we clear? With the help of the priesthood. What I'm saying to you is, everything that you need to know about yourself is really demonstrated in nature if you really study yourself. And that the truth of religion is actually written in nature. is written in the heavens and the earth. But you know, most know the science of them both. That's religion. All clear. And so when you're looking at that crescent and the star, you're looking at the heavens and the earth. When you're looking at that crescent and the star, you're looking at Venus and the moon. When you want to grow crops to feed humanity and to govern humanity, whether leaf plant, stem plant, or root plant, you look at the moon and you do an almanac, dealing with the movements of the moon, because all farmers use it all over the planet. At what point we don't understand that Islam is science? The ruling of the planet, or the ruling of the people, or the misruling of the planet, and the misruling of the people is where they made it into dogma. That's where your problem is. And the other part of the problem is people don't want to admit it. Why? Because they've been benefiting from the fraud that they have created. That's the truth. Now, point. Knowing that the masses of the world are corrupted, and there's no need to argue with them because they're just damn corrupt. And it's just that these people got such beautiful, pure hearts and belief in Allah and Jesus and God and Yahweh that they really want to fix this thing. Most of them are parasites. That's the truth. Might have 1 or 2 in 100 that's worthy of their salt or worthy of breathing the air that the Creator gave us. Most of them are ticks and leeches, which is why the world's in trouble. And the fact that our women keep supporting them doubles the problem, and keeps delivering our children to them triples the problem. Then they have sons that grow up and don't know how to treat women because they keep taking them to these daggone priests who are just the corrupt germs of the planet, and nobody wants to charge them and act like they got some connection with Allah and Jesus. They don't. They're selfish pigs, 90% of them. And if you do some research, that's a provable fact, though I'm not charging everybody. And I'm not taking a self-righteous position, so I'm not playing that game. I'm just telling the truth, because the record will show for itself. I say this. For those of you who have any honor or any integrity in your hearts whatsoever, study the science of the womb, the Ankh, study the salts. That's the truth of religion. It's not only cosmology and astrology, but this is part of it. You get the point? Because that which is above is so below. And so you have above hex alpha, so below. And so that's a balance. Now, the deal of it is, when you're dealing with, say, for instance, you've got your 4 points. You've got your 4 points of the mundane earth, right? And that's your symbol of the mundane earth, what you call the Holy Cross, right? And of course, when you're dealing with it scientifically, you have the 333 in each corner. You all already know that kind of stuff. But I'm just pointing this out to you because all these symbols belong to you. They're not separate. The priesthood separate them so they can rule you. Are we clear? But in secret, they got them all. Are we clear? Now, the deal of it is, like say, for instance, if you have, like say you're air or you're water, and say you're my daughter, right? And he's checking you out, right? And, oh man, that's just became mad, boy. Let me tell you. You know, and then you come checking out, you know, you say, oh, Mr. Taj, you know, I got some flowers and stuff. I said, where you get that at? Kmart? You didn't come, you know, type thing. But the deal of it is how it really works is this. And the really reason why they what you call pre-marriage and controlled marriage, so that the natural projection, the natural attraction of male and female, which is nature itself. So if you're an air and she's water, Y'all can be hot on each other for 2 minutes, but we wouldn't sanction the marriage. Are we clear? It would be an earth, according to divine laws of nature. That's the first level of harmony. First level. First level. Then we look at your sun, your sun, your moon, and your rising. Now, your moon is really the personality of who you really are. The sun is more or less the container. You get the point? All right? And then your rising, how you present, how you are presented. But we would make sure that at least 2 of those harmonize. Why? So that the matrimony will have lifespan and that you will not bring in the chemistry of the creations negative spirits. Mix using the salts of the earth. It's no different than you can put, like a couple of chefs in the kitchen, same spices, and they don't know how to use them. Hey, I like you, boy, but can't cook. You understand? And I'm presenting to you common sense. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, just what you explained as far as the male and the woman being compatible. Is that the reason why in some cultures today, basically, the parents come together and they choose, if you know the science behind it, they choose what male or female?
Yeah, most people don't understand the culture, look at it as, the parents being over-controlling, and it really wasn't that. It was based on science of harmony. In other words, civilizations last longer when they're built on the science of nature. Why a lot of societies are so corrupted now is because we're actually in disharmony of nature. This is what's called gratifying the lower self. Like, let me give you an example. How many of you have the questionnaire that the illustrious Prophet Noble Drawley presented to the Moorish Americans? You have? No, but are you familiar with it, right? How many of you really studied it graphically? Do you notice that there's 9 drops of water coming off the woman he has in his arms, and he's standing on a rock, 1 foot in the water, 1 on a rock, and that humanity is literally written on her womb? That's the applied science of the number 9. How many adepts or grand sheiks or sheikas has told you that? They know it. That's how they got their degrees. That's why they call adepts. You know what adept means? Adept means expert in a science, or that means a PhD. That means whatever science you're in. Like my family's barbers, right? Right? So I cut hair. So I knew Texas hair, cut any kind of texture hair. Do you understand? So it's a science of that, right? Right? I'm a house doctor, right? So I'll fix that. I'll fix that light up there. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a science. What has happened is that they've been giving people who should have been educated into the sciences, beliefs in the place of sciences, and told them that the beliefs are power, that the beliefs are knowledge. Then the people go out into the world, the beliefs don't never work, they always get beat up. But the priests always dress nice. They got it going on. Turbans with jewels all in them and stuff like that. And revs with $3,000 suits. I'm serious. $6 million planes, that's what he goes grocery shopping with. Yeah, I mean, these people have been getting over on the poor people forever in the name of gods, while secretly they know this science. Are we clear? How is it that the Europeans occupying the Western Hemisphere have been ruling you? As an example, and there's no disparaging statement against her, it's not against her whatsoever. Hillary Clinton's a DAR. Daughter of American Revolution. Why do you think the European women are ruling these Asiatic women who keep talking about Hotep and they're the ancient goddesses and everything? Well, how come you keep paying their IRS and stuff? You got all this God stuff going on. At what time are we going to start really being who we claim to be? Or even challenging the positions that we're in with reality of action? You know what I mean? Meaning that what I'm saying is, shouldn't it be better for us to get away from the imagery that we keep doing and start being who we claim that we are? Well, that will be done with science. It will be done with knowledge. It will not be done with belief. Nothing wrong with beliefs for children. Knowledge is for adults to run the planet. I'm clear. So if we see the little children, you know, if we bring some children up here and they're playing with little blocks with, you know, boats on it and, you know, different colors and letters, and the children says, you know, they're about an hour and they say, oh, look, this spells cat. And you clap and you're really impressed, and it really does. It don't have to spell cat. But if you think spell cat, you let them feel what they got and you correct them a little bit. But that's for children. But when they become adults, you expect them to be writing sentences and paragraphs and books and putting their childish things away. This is the damage that the priesthood has done to the masses, has convinced the masses that belief systems are the epitome of spirituality, and they've lied. And nobody challenges them. When the priest himself do not deal with beliefs, he deals with science. And he's wealthy at the expense of the widow's pennies. This is the argument in the allegorical story of Jesus arguing with the priesthood who is stealing the widow's pennies. That's really what it's all about. They themselves know the truth and will hinder the little ones from knowing the truth. I mean, what they teaching, they don't believe that crap themselves because they know it's allegorical. Are we clear? Not wrong, allegorical, and anthropomorphic without explanation. See, it's sort of like deceit, lying by deceit. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It's sort of like taking advantage of a child saying, how much is zero? And the child says, zero is nothing. Well, how much is one? Isn't one more than zero? And the child says, well, yeah. Well, see, now you got that note in your hand, and that has a 1 and a 0, and they call that a $10 bill, right? And now, on that table over there, you got that other note that says 1 and a 0 and a 0. So since it's got 2 zeros, that's worth more or less than the other one. So I'll give you a 1 0 for that 1 0 0, and you take advantage of the children because you know the child doesn't calculate. That's what the priesthood has been doing to the masses of adults, keeping them on the belief degree. Knowingly. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So like we make the Hajj, right? Make the Hajj, you go around Kaaba 7 times, counterclockwise, right? 7 times, right? You look in the book of Revelation, and you see Yeshua, they say, I heard this one speak with a voice of many waters, and he was standing before 7 golden candlesticks. Now the imams, the priests, and the rabbis, and the bishopric all know they represent the same thing. But they have Muslims and Christians battling each other based on beliefs. And both of those are symbolic, allegorical principles of the 7 ruling planets in the solar system in a counter-revolutionary orbit spiraling behind the sun. And each one of those orbital planes are represented by each one of those circumambulations around the Kaaba. But how many Muslims or Muslims can tell you the degrees of each one of those circles? Or the planetary spheres that they're symbolized by? Or the colors that are represented by each one of them? Or the metals that are represented by each one of them? They can't because they're not taught that. But the priesthood know. And they doing fine. Nice silk garb, gold threads through their turban, alchemical metal of the sun. These people keep saying that they love Jesus and all that other stuff, and they don't fear nobody but Allah. They fear Rome. They don't fear no Allah. They don't honor no Prophet Muhammad. They fear Rome. They won't buy, they won't sell, they won't breathe, they won't move without the mark or the number of that Roman's name, called a license. What is a license? A license is granted fiat authority from someone who claims authority to do something that is otherwise unlawful. That's what a license is. And everybody keeps going to him for a license, because they don't even know fundamental jurisdiction. Who's your mother? Go ahead.
Islam. I have a question about that.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier about how most men that are attached to women that are part of the Christian faith, how they feel being second.
And they don't. They often don't talk to them. As a matter of fact, by me being I don't do it except privately. Barber, and anyone that works in that type of industry, you be in certain circles where things are talked about that they don't talk about openly, because most men have both real and artificial pride. And so a lot of things that they will not talk about, even to their wives, they'll talk about in church. About church, in shops. Like an example, a lot of men will go to church to get along with their wives, but they really wouldn't go other than that. But that's a subtle anger and a subtle break of mistrust they have with her, putting more strength in her participation in the church than in their family and their home. And in his mind, that guy's a con artist. And it's a sensory thing, not necessarily always based in knowledge, but a sensory thing. Because when you read the Bible, it doesn't harmonize with what these people, as an example, in different times you'll hear them discussing the Bible, and they'll talk about how the Bible talks about Jesus was a Jew, and all these people keep saying he's a Jew, and then this reverend saying that he's a Christian, and that you're going to hell if you're not a Christian. And then when you go into the history of the one that they call Jesus, you find there's no J in Hebrew, no J in Aramaic, and the one they called Jesus spoke Aramaic. And his greetings to the world was Assalamu alaikum. That's Aramaic, right? But you know, and I know, that if you say that in the church, most of these people will throw you out on your head. But that's the same Jesus they say they love. Then when you do the research and you find ancient Canaan, which is now, which is Palestine, which is now they're calling Israel, something they made up in 1947, cover up, fakery, and then their wives take so much finance from the house to give to this leech. Because it's sort of like this sacred cow type thing. You're not supposed to say these things that you see that are contradictory. And then if you don't contribute, then she's going to get an attitude with you. And that's just one part of the problem, where they start this psychological drifting. And it's not always recognized immediately. It takes place over a period of time. And after a while, they feel separate.
Right, and so my question would be, I would say cosmology-wise, the great spell, the great marriage spell that each party cite when they go before the altar, and the pastor have them to recite, to have and to hold, which binds that marriage contract, binds them to the state, and
yes,
binds their heirs.
Which is first party.
Yeah, so that places the state over their marriage and their
yes.
affairs.
And remember the license?
Is there a correlation?
Well, remember the license?
Yes.
All right, now let's back up.
Mm-hmm.
That was set up by the popes of Rome, mm-hmm, to claim the womb.
Exactly.
And a certificate, which means it's a bank bond, mm-hmm, which means they've been sold to each other. And by the license coming first, that means there's the first party in the heirship. So not only do they own the womb, they own any inheritances. This is why whenever there's any like one of the things like say you look at marriage and you look at succession of hereditaments, right? If there's anyone gets sick or one of them passes form, the first thing happens with all of their estate, it goes into probate. And the man or the woman ain't got no say whatsoever. The state immediately steps in and starts divvying up, and they take their stuff off the top. And 9 times out of 10, they tax you out, and you don't have nothing. A lot of times you end up owing them. How do you think that happens? 10. How do you think that happens?
The license?
You daggone right. Now, Reverend gets paid. You think he don't know that?
Yes. That's a part of this.
No. Now, let's look at it this way. For this man who knows Jesus and everything, and know what God's going to do, and what God's going to sanction, God ain't going to sanction, and all this stuff, and before God and throwing rice in your eyes, that's to blind you. So you get it together, and you know he made this transference and stuff. You know, the deal of it is, they're going to tell you about gods in the netherworld, but you think they don't know that that's a bank bond? Oh, yes, he does. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you how the high priests work. This is how the high priests work. You know, the karmic response, you know, because divine law don't recognize personal station. So he'll tell the truth so that he can get off in the future. So he'll say, oh, you was checking out that sister? You like her Nikes? And she like your Adidas. And then you come before the altar. So come on before the altar. He says, then they'll tell you the truth. They'll tell the dumb masses who don't listen to things, right? Who just deal with beliefs, right? That there's a separation of church and state. Don't they always say that? And then, because they got that contract now, they got that bond, and it's already up in New York, it's already on the market before the ceremony takes place. As soon as you sign for it, then they say, by the power vested in me. You didn't say by Allah, by Jesus, by God. Say by the power vested in me, by the state of Delaware.
Let me say God first.
I pronounce
I
you.
did a lot of God. You say God and the state of Delaware.
Well, God is true. Now, the deal of this,
But I'm just saying.
it is with the knowledge. It is with the knowledge that God is generic. Because it's not. Now, hold on.
No, when I did it, it was a man sitting up on the throne in the cloud.
Yeah. Now let's look at this. Another way that the dark priesthood protect themselves is they will be honest and they'll say, and I'll just worship in God and only fear God, and I'm collecting God's half and pass the plate and stuff. I don't want to hear no jingles, right? And then they'll say, Satan is the God of this world. And then they'll stand behind a pulpit. So they gave you the signal who they're working for. So they didn't lie, did they? Most people don't pay attention. What we're trying to do is get you to start paying attention. Pay attention to details. Because demons like to tell you the truth, but they like to deceive you. This is why we keep failing. Because we're following a bunch of demons in the name of Allah, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Muhammad. And you better start making discernment. Who is your mother? Because when you're talking about mother, you're talking about who made you. You say, Allah made me? Well, yeah, because Allah is a feminine name. Yes, your mom. And that's true. And it's undisputable, though people will dispute it. Because they'll try to make it an image of a man sitting with on a throne with a turban on, when actually Allah is feminine. It is your mother. Now, if you make it into a dogma, then it becomes some other image. Do you understand? And now people are fighting with each other. You get the point? And that's true. Now, Kitty, curing. How do you cure problems? Do you look at problems emotionally and seek to solve them, or do you do what is called a logistical analysis? A logistical analysis is where one takes anything, any substance, any chemical, any science, and breaks it down into its smallest component parts. Study each component part individually until you get as much an understanding and comprehension of the function, the makeup, the nature, and the capacities of that element. And then you gather the elements back together and study it as a whole. And this is what is done in science, period. Whether you're dealing with chemistry, language, military operations, any form of science on the planet Earth. And they will not teach logistics and logistical principles to our children because they don't want you to use that common sense. It is also from the principle the same way you would use etymology to trace linguistic forms and how they come from one language to another. It's the same principle that you would do logistically in alchemy and all other sciences. And it's very fundamental, it's very simple. And the same principle goes with the use of the salts in the womb. So like, for instance, your mother, so we need, like say we need some beings for certain purposes in the society, right? You govern your womb accordingly, according to your cycle, and bring them out under the constellation that's necessary in harmony with what your need is and in harmony with your mate. And this is the deal, what they call virgin birth. What the virgin birth principle means, or the Pythagorean principle means, is a conscious woman who administers to her womb that consciousness and brings the form or the temple of man already here to do a job and cognate of the job they have to do. This is where you see, like symbolically in the book of Genesis, where the angels were administering to Mary and Elizabeth, who were cousins. And then you have John and Jesus. The administering to the womb is simply applying the science of nine, or the knowledge of the womb and the universe and cosmos, to their consciousness. And they brought these sons, or what you call champions, to the earth to bring solution to the planet. That's the applied science of the number 9. It's told you in many ways, but very often people don't know what they're looking at because the priesthood will not tell you what you're looking at. They'll just present those allegorical stories, and they're allegorical. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And because Jesus represents the movement or the equinoxes of the sun, and then the uses of the womb to bring to the earth the champions who are needed to solve the problems of humanity. However, as women have forgotten their knowledge or gotten away from Islam, and so what you got, a bunch of cooks in the kitchen can't cook. And this is why you got confusion in our community. It's really simple, it's chemistry. And then the ego gets in front of reality, are we clear? Or that's called gratifying the lower self, meaning that we are guided by our carnal desires rather than the positive desires of the proper use of the womb to bring to the planet what is needed to solve the problems of the planet. Rome knows that, he promotes that. This is why if you study military operations, study as an example because most of you have it, say as an example, the technical manual 11490, where they promote wanton sexual practices in targeted communities, poor food, sport and play, and wanton sex, because they already know that's their culture. And we don't understand that because we know that sex is natural. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But not knowing the science of it, the wanton use of it, you bring all kind of problems here, because we don't recognize that you can't violate nature and not have a product that you create. Do you understand? And we be thinking that it's just attitude, or that they need some upbringing. And so even right now, you see half the youth now, they trying to survive because they don't believe in the generation that come before them because we've abandoned them. Act like they grew themselves. You know, they got no civic organizations whatsoever. They see a church on every other corner and everybody else doing good but them. All they see is jail, drugs, broken families, and then the parents tell them about salvation and give you your last $5 in Reverend Pigfoot. You know, and they didn't see that for so many generations, you know what I mean? And for those of you who have any age whatsoever, most of you have at least enough knowledge and memory in your family where you have land in your family that you don't have now, that none of you all should be working right now. None of you should be poor. Because I can say it in my family, I already know it. You know, like for those in Jersey, as an example. That hotel right near exit 4 in Jersey Turnpike, they were liquidating the last vestiges of my family's land, right, from generations before. My family owned the land near Merchantville, up into Pennsauken, up into Cherry Hill where the racetrack used to be, where the depot and all that stuff is right now. And we should be super wealthy. Super wealthy, not wealthy, super wealthy. Do you understand? And I remember it was so many people, they actually rented the hotel up there near, you know, to have the convention, to divvy out the checks of the last vestiges of our land to the heirs, generations down. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people that were there in the family, many of them I nationalized, didn't even know they were my family. And I remember I had a check. I had a check for like $2 grand, something like that. I wouldn't even cash it. You know what I mean? I was so disgusted. You know, and it was like hundreds of us there. You know, and over the years, they've been robbing our people forever, who don't understand that they're the people of the land. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the Europeans have been stealing our people's lands forever and ever, and half our people think they came from someplace else, and it's like out to lunch. And many of you can do that kind of tracing in your families, and you'll see half these people think they came from someplace else. And half these people got little service jobs, trying to survive, trying to pay rent, and trying to pay taxes. And none of that stuff applies to them. And the issue comes back to who's your mother. When you talk about nationhood, the principle of the nations are based on a matriarchy. It's the nation, the land is called motherland. The flag is called the mother. The principles of your laws called mother, based on mother nature and order. Or what you call, we become conversos. You know, and that's where the so-called Moors and Jews converted to Christianity. I think that beliefs are just, you know, some interesting thing that you can take or leave as you will. It's a political system of mind control. That's the fact. And so to really get you back, you need to know who your mother is. If you need to understand government, know who your mother is. If you need to understand jurisdiction on all its points in relationship to in personam of the physical temple of man, i.e. Solomon's temple, the jurisdiction of self, then you need to know who your mother is. If you need to understand jurisdiction of subject matter, you need to know who your mother is. If you need to know territorial, which is the land, i.e. the earth, upon which you stand, the gift of the Creator to all nations, etc. You need to know who your mother is. And your nation is named after your mother. And without a nationality or recognition of your nativity, you have no inherited estate. And this is why those subject matters are not discussed amongst people who keep talking about nation of this and nation of that. They'll say nation without teaching nationality because they're corrupt as hell and nobody will charge them. And that's the really truth. Another reason I'll pick this subject matter up is because we need to start solving problems. The other deal of it is, for the few, and if this message gets out to some of the young sisters out there, who have been betrayed, and it's just blunt truth, by those generations that superseded us because they sold out, and that's the truth. Go into the science of the womb, the science of the salts, and here and there may be one who has a pure enough heart that is not so corrupted that they can bring some champions to this planet, because that's what that womb is for, to solve the problems of the earth. It shall be done, so mote it be, because that is how it's done. And those champions are called prophets and seers. It's not some spooky thing. They're cures. That's how this planet works. That's how it always has worked. And they're not coming for you to worship, adorize, or praise. They're come to guide you out of the darkness into light. And that has always been the truth. And it has always been some woman who is actually behind the scene that fixes it. This is why they suppress women. They don't want you to know the power of your womb. That's a fact. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Yes.
All right. Now, scroll up. I think we covered most of this. Now, what can be done to assist the families of the natural people of the land who have suffered and are still suffering from the miseducation and the demo-promotion of the bishopric order of Rome and their self-promoting godship? Because it's important for people to know that Rome and the priests have declared themselves God. That's what unum sanctum is all about. This is why the different organizations will not teach about unum sanctum and the real politics of the world and how it's connected and why you're in trouble today. Are we clear? Clear. Or like if somebody brings the information, they'll minimize it like, oh, it's interesting, but it ain't important type thing. When it's all of the ball of wax of the entire politics of the planet. Are we clear? And they definitely don't want women to know the power of that womb. Two things. One, she might get even. True. So part of it is fear. Justified fear, because justice might come. That's why they say the Virgin Mother brings Jesus, and Jesus means justice. Although there's no J in Hebrew or Aramaic, in that symbolism, Jesus means justice, which means that sword. That's where it talks about in the Bible, it talks about that double-edged sword. You better be on the handle side, because it cuts both ways. That's why they use that Moorish sword with the scimitar, which the scimitar represents a crescent moon. And then when you see that sphinx head, like on them churches, you see them in the churches and the different organizations, and you see it in the special parking area. They subjugate the woman, they got the nation. And that's what's happening to us. Are we clear? Now, other issue. People who know this information are reluctant to teach it because what happens, it doesn't make finance for them. And most of them are in it for the finance. They ain't interested in raising this nation. They interested in getting paid. Few pieces of silver, they sell themselves out. And they're selfish. So the deal of it is, you have a few people who are honorable enough to tell the truth that will try to raise the people, not at the cost of a few pieces of silver. Just simply tell the truth because it's the truth. If the truth was told, they wouldn't have to worry about the finances. But they're so selfish that they'll hold the truth back and watch the community fall apart and then talk about, well, look at the community is falling apart because they're living dead culture, as if they didn't know that. While they themselves know the truth and won't tell the truth because they don't want to rock the boat, or because they're afraid that their woman will know the truth about herself and won't take the BS that he be putting on her. That's the truth. Hey, it's what it is. Because a real man ain't intimidated by the power of woman. He compliments her just like she compliment him. There's a balance. You understand what I'm saying? But everybody want to rule or own somebody. That's where really the problem is. And then we all suffer. And then Rome rules them all, the dummies. You know, their egos and their vanity stands in front of truth. They won't accept the truth because it counters everything they've been doing with their BS selves. So the deal of it is you just simply have to put the truth out there and hope. You know, it's sort of like when you see a barrel of rotten apples, rotting, not rotten, but rotting apples, pour them out and wash them off and save the few that's good, and then take some seeds from the others, and then toss the rest, use the rest for fertilizer, but try to get that one good apple and feed something with it. You know what I mean? And basically that, you know, that's pretty much what you're looking for. Because the world's been so much contaminated that, you know, I'm not being unrealistic. You know, I'm very pragmatic. And I know that most everybody's corrupted. You know, so if you can appeal to a few and get that knowledge to them, they will develop. It's sort of like watering a seed that has not been watered. You don't give it anything. The water will do that. And the moon and the sun do their job. Don't, you know, sort of like, you don't pat your finger, your feet, talking, hey, what you do, man? Yeah, I just planted this seed, man. I'm just waiting for these daughter cells, plants to come up there. You don't plant, you know, go mind your business. Go find something to do. Clean the earth, put the seed in there, water it, let the sun, the moon, and Venus do their job. Just tell the truth is the most powerful seed. And in due time, amongst all the scattered seeds, there will be one that will germinate. And the rare one of quality will grow up and start saving humanity. Those are called the champions. And it will be brought by some woman who dawns on her who she really is. But her ego is not in front of her womb. You get the point? Humble does not mean being weak. Humble means being respectful of divine law and principle and honor. And it is a woman like that who's going to bring the champions who will solve the problems of the earth. Applied science of the number 9. Who is your mother? And that's the politics of the planet. And the deal of it is, what I just said, and this is just a little bit of stuff. All priests know what I just said. And the sharper that brought this darkness to the world, they'll go down in their lower chambers while they have all them homophobic, whatever, guys in semi-skirts and them fish heads, them miters. They'll go down to them chambers and bow down to the great Moabites. And the liars on the planet will call her a Black Madonna. Ain't no damn Black Madonna, that's a slave. The great Moabites. Because they still maintain the matriarchy. That's how they've been ruling you. With your own stuff. While you've been worshiping these idol gods that Rome gave you. Which is why you keep losing. And refuse to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Which is why he got all your stuff. Why he got all your land. Why the IRS takes all your stuff. Why they gentrify your community, why they garnish all your accounts, why they steal all your resources, then charge you with child support. Oh yeah. Take your horsey and charge you for not riding. That's how it's done. And it starts with suppressing the woman. And so it starts with, again, with us going along with that BS. Because we don't want to rock the boat. That's the truth. And what I just said, every reverend knows, every imam knows, because they're all addicts. Yes, they are. And they're all Gnostics. And then they act like they got some kind of different beliefs. In secret, they all learn the same Gnostic wisdom. Are we clear? What you call Judaism, ancient Sindh from the ancient Mauryan dynasty, you write this down because you can do some research. Mauryan Nanda dynasties in ancient Sindh that you now call India. And the ancient Brahmin priesthood, and a lot of your Gnostic wisdom is what comes down as Zoroastrianism. You call Zoroaster. This is where Islam comes from. And what you call Judaism, which is which in your creed principle. And then the corruption of it is called Christianity, coming out of Judaism. They all have the same root. Are we clear? Are we clear? Clear. And anybody got a degree in religion knows that. You know why they won't teach that? So they can play with you. And play big man, little man. Big I, little you type thing with you. And then for those of you catch on, they start making different sects and have you fighting amongst each other. That's why Prophet Muhammad said, there will be no secularism in Islam. How many we got? About 77, 78? I don't know. How many sects of Christianity? About 58,000? Well, I'm talking facts. And who did that? The priesthood. Who's the victim? The people who think they know religion and they're being played. And nobody wants to rock the boat because they want to get paid and they don't want not to be liked. Everybody want to be liked. And so they know these truths, but they know if they tell these truths that people will not like them. Trolls come out. You think vampires. Start telling the truth. You'll act like you just farted at the Queen's prom. Like really. This like really. They treat truth like it's poison. Like you gotta apologize for telling. You know, you'd be surprised over these years how many people who know this information and who will admit it privately are mad at me for being honest with people. You tell them too much. Well, ain't that what you was there for? Ain't that why you was assigned as an addict? Weren't you supposed to take this to the four corners of the earth, to all nations? Wasn't that your charge? Yeah, but the people ain't ready for it. Well, if they ain't ready for it, why don't you leave them the hell alone? They always got an excuse. Well, anyway. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I ain't. But I don't. That's how I feel about them. And that's why they don't like me. I don't care if they don't like me. You know, but the deal of it is, some of the youth that will come, that will get this here and there, will come with new spirits, uncontaminated. And will take this and this will activate their DNA. Because this stuff that we're talking about is really in all of us. It's in their memory, but they must be pure of heart. And it will just simply wake it up, no different than turn on that light switch. And you'll think that they'll think that, hey, well, that child's a genius. That child ain't no genius. It just came from a pure mother. And the purer she is, that's how it's going to happen. But sometimes you gotta shake them out of that slumber, and they think you ain't delivered nothing. It's already there. You just knocked that soot off them stones at the bottom of that pool. You know how like you wave your hand in the stream, and then you start seeing these smooth stones? Man, they smooth because water been running over them for centuries. That's how it's done. Any questions? Give us a mic.
Can you give that information again regarding India? The names of the dynasties in India?
The dynasties in
India.
India.
Oh.
Mauryan, Nanda, Gupta.
You saw that? Mauryan, Nanda, Gupta.
And I'll tell you this too. Now I knew about it. I knew about it, but in more detail, We make it a large A instead of a small a. Now, my brother, I was putting an addition on my brother's house, upstate New York. And my sister-in-law worked with a sister, Hindustani. And understand they're not Indian. That stuff is made up here. Ain't no such thing as India. You understand what I'm saying to you? That's Sindh, and about a little over 2,000 years ago, the Moors named Sindh Hindustan. The Europeans called it India when they was trying to take over the trade routes of the Moors. Are we clear? That's totally made up. Ain't no such thing as Indians on that side or this side. So let's get that out of the way, all right, from the jump. Now, my sister-in-law worked. And I won't name their names because you know it's private, you know. But anyway, brother asked my brother would I come and look at his house and do some work for him because he's seen the work that I did at my brother's house, you know. And so they had this beautiful house. It was actually literally built over a stream in the mountains. In other words, a stream run through the middle of their house. All right, beautiful house. You know, and on one side to the back door, they had these, you know, steps that rise up on the rocks, but there were slabs, and some were unsettled and stuff like that. And they had a 2-car garage, and he wanted me. His wife is an artist, and she did beautiful art, right? And he wanted to put the humidity in check. So he wanted me to dig into the rock, into the house, and put a couple of sump pumps in. And then he wanted me to kind of seal the walls there. And he wanted me to make an art studio and some custom bookcases, you know, for his rare books, because he had rare books. And anyway, so I looked at it and I agreed to do the work. Now, one of the interesting things is he noticed that I was a Bey, right? And he said to me, he says, I saw your work, and he said, I could see the spirit of your work. He says, your sense of detail is very keen. And he says, do you know your history here? And I said, well, a little bit, you know, like that. And now, mind you, I'm national, and my brother's not, though my brother's conscious of some things. And before 12 o'clock every day, his wife, tea time, right? And they had antique furniture, real expensive antique furniture. And they put a cloth there, and I'd wash up, and she'd bring it on like a towel. She'd have a towel on her arm and a platter and sit it before me, and then Raj would go to his library and pull out a rare book with white gloves and give it to me. He said, look at it. He says, now, do you know about the Mauryan dynasty? I said, sure, I know about the Mauryan dynasty. Boy, he was all fired up. He even gave me a couple rare books that are actually worth a couple $100 themselves, rare books. He was so happy that I was conscious, you know, because they wondered what's wrong with us here. Because we don't know our own history over there. And they actually honor our mothers and fathers, and we be all out to damn much. We're that disconnected. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? We be thinking that they're totally somebody else, totally, when they're our offspring. And the whole principles of the ancient religious culture came from us. the Moors, the ancient Moors, because we keep thinking North Africa, Andalusia, and we're from the top of Asia all the way back down. And the culture that created all the religions have its origin in ancient Sindh from the Mauryan non-Gupta dynasties of the Moors. Same Moors who now think they niggers and blacks and think they only came from that side of the water of Africa. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And every day at 12, when I was there, they brought out tea. And she gave me some rare teas. She said, they don't bring these teas over there because they're too expensive. They give you all the trash. Even your good teas are trash to them. Oh, excuse me. I was just moving out the way because I wanted to see that. But the deal of it is, what I'm saying to you, our concepts about ourselves are entirely wrong, and they're limited. And we keep thinking, you ask the average Asiatic, about their culture, and they keep thinking Tunis, Algeria, Morocco, Al-Andalus, Sierra Leone, the West Coast. No. They don't even know about Queen Dodo, or the King of Tarik. You know what I mean? The Carthaginian order with Hasdrubal. It'll solve. And it'll solve because even though we've been extremely, not a little bit contaminated, extremely contaminated, and the egos and our selfishness and our greed for finance is so far ahead of anything in honor that most of the people that have the knowledge just ain't gonna tell it. They'll let the next generation die first. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But nevertheless, there will be these spirits who the knowledge hits that will wake up, and they'll come sometimes from people who are totally against this information, discovering who they really are, when they're pure enough. Because they're all here. They're really all here. And the other deal of it is, you can say Herod. So really with the Romans trying to kill off the firstborn, they can't do it now because it's in too many bodies. See, so anything they do now, they can't get that thing off no more. Where Prophet Muhammad was on the scene, they ran him out. Yeshua was here, they ran him out. Same game over and over again. Mazda, same principle over and over again. Because this has been a battle for actually millennia. But the deal of it is, the champions are in multiple bodies now. They can't kill them all. So this is more like what they call the Aquarian cycle. It's almost like you can call an end of an era of evolution of the human, that they must ascend to a higher plane regardless of what they think. Meaning that the cycles that we've been going through for millennia are coming to a halt. So that means there must be conclusions, So again, knowing that and knowing how things work, this is why a lot of the politics that you see taking place now on the below are reflections of the above. That's the hexapla. The other deal of it is in relationship to the workings of the womb. In relationship to the workings of the womb, your consciousness is what you're looking for this balance. Excuse my scribble because I ain't that good an artist. But what you don't want, and this is back to understanding mating. That's an imbalance. That's what happens. Like if you do a matrimony, say a fire and a water, instead of fire and air, which is the first order, You see? So that balance must be made. And then if the planets don't harmonize, then when you reproduce, you bring that disharmony, right? And see, and then what they do after you bring the temple into form and you got all these problems, then they're doing all these psychiatrists and all that stuff trying to balance this thing out. And so they take you to a school room instead of solving the problem in the first room, which is the womb. That's why the applied science of number 9 is important, because you're supposed to teach them children, them offspring, them seed while they're in the womb, so they come out already educated. Because the priesthood is so dirty, they have allowed this stuff to go on, they promote this stuff so that they can feed on the carrion. That's why they're called jackals. Do you understand? Because there are jackals. And so the same way you see this, right? Same principle. Those are imbalances. Are we clear? So when you use the science, you're always seeking hex alpha. And when when they say as above, so below, that's what that means. Are we clear? So if you use the science of the heavens, knowing the transits of the sun, its effect on all life, the moon and the stars. That's why the Bible says, I leave these signs for you, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Follow no damn beliefs. Are we clear? Clear. And they use the science to bring to the earth what is needed to solve humanity's problems. And it's done with the womb. Are we clear? And so the people think they're powerless. They're not powerless. They lack knowledge and are destroyed by the day for lack of knowledge. And the priesthood have kept the knowledge from them, kept it for the selfish selves, and have been raping your children and doing all kind of foul things in the name of Jesus, God, Allah, and everybody else. Are we clear? And getting away with it. Nobody will challenge them because they're murderers. They're criminals standing behind a pulpit. And people keep on thinking because they say God that they're holy. God is anything from dirt to germs to anything that's worship or praise. Has nothing to do with the supreme being. It's a generic term. It means to call upon, to invoke, and to pour out. That's what it means. That's what the word means. It's a verb transitive, not a being. That's why they won't teach language to people, because they got the whole world deceived. So when they come up to them about God said, what are you talking about, Lords of London? Well, that's who's been running this thing. That is who's been running this thing. In truth. Not guessing. That's who's been running this thing. Get her, Mike. I saw that hand.
So, while I was out, I was listening to a commercial a few minutes ago, and it made me think of something. So it's probably not very relevant and completely relevant, rather, to what you're saying, but something you said earlier. When you think in terms of the deception, what we've been undergoing for millennia, the fact that I was a commercial for the IRS. It said that the IRS has the right to garnish your property, do this, take
that commercial?
Well, yeah, it was one of those commercials.
No, say it out, because I was thinking about it today myself.
Yeah, it was. I was listening to the commercial about how the IRS has the right to do this, that, and the other.
It said they have the power.
The power, and then the place that was actually being advertised, something rightly called Republic Tax, and they have the ability to negotiate a lesser, or even in some cases, nothing at all. And it came to mind, I was like, the IRS kind of has catch-alls. If they think that we don't know that they create these subsets because they know they're not legal, but they don't have the real power. So if we can't get you at their highest level, then we'll create these entities to settle for a fraction of what you don't really owe us anyway. And it just
that's why.
Because Because I'm like, how, if they really had the power, how would some independent organization be able to cut that down to nothing?
Now, here we go. Who's your mother? Because the mother or the matriarchy principle is how nations are run. This is why in slave states, they don't talk nationality, except when they're trying to lock somebody out. As an example, the Europeans, like Tam was saying, Tam was when he was talking earlier, right? They're talking about building a wall, and you know what we talk. So Mexicans are Americans. The ones talking trash are foreign Europeans occupying America. They're doing mind control and mental training through controlling the narrative. After a few generations of training, the average person who've been subjugated to that narrative for years start calling the Europeans' jurisdiction America as a country, meaning that the Romans own America. Inquisition operation. See the subtlety? All right? America's a continent, not continents, a continent. North, Central, and South America is one continent, conquered under the Spanish Inquisition. Conquistadors and colonists. Colonists to the north, conquistadors to the south. Spanish Inquisition. Conquerors of the Moors. They have conquered the Maghreb, like that French Muslim school Malcolm. The Maghreb ain't even this lot. But I go most extreme west. You got, oh brother, come with that nigger black stuff. That's slave language. He had a rude awakening. That was one of Malcolm's wake-ups. Now, this is not unknown to the world. The deal of it is, the concept that the European is American is part of stealing your birthright. The part of you not countering that is giving up your birthright. The part of you accepting that is denying your right of a state. And yet it doesn't appear to be that way on the surface, does it? But anybody knows language knows that that's what took place. Are we clear? Now, key. So when you're talking nationhood, you're talking mother. When you're talking mother, you're talking children. When you're talking mother and child, you're talking sovereign and nationals, or sovereign and citizens. That's what that nature is. It's the same exact thing. No different. When you're talking nationalization, you're talking at any particular time, the children of one mother may be in the territory or A19, dealing with whatever category of why you're in another mother's house. Therefore, know who your mother is. Once you forget who that is and someone tricks you to start talking colors and stuff like that, you just stepped off the platform of reality in the political world. Now you're subject to whoever game that you just bought. This is how the European is ruling these people here. Are we clear? That's true. Now, when it comes to solving the problem, we're talking political, not what people's opinions are, how they feel, or how much fiat they got, or how much they don't have. You save a nation by nationalizing. Now, let's get all the bull out of the way of whatever you've been told in history. When, and this is redundant, Treaty of Versailles, First World War, which was contrived by the Europeans. It was a contrived war. Germany could not have a standing army, according to the Treaty of Versailles. There were people in Germany. They were both Germans, Polish, etc., and others, Czechs, etc., and Khazarians. They had say we got to fix my mother. You get off her breast, you ain't sucking no more of her milk. Party's over, you ain't got to go home, but you're leaving here. You take your frog feet, you can take some balloons and blow them boys up. You can backstroke across the river. Do what you got to do. You can fart and light it and shoot off where you're going, but you're leaving here. That's called nationalization. That is done all over the planet called Earth to save nations. Forget all the other history they're telling you about Hitler. Let's talk about what the real politics is. In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, he came before the United Nations. Same Europeans and Khazarians who have been robbing everybody else for generations, pretending they're Americans. They have what they call hedge funds investments in Venezuela, and they have what you call CIA operations. And they were raping, Venezuela for the oil and the sugar and stuff like that. And so Hugo Chavez came to the podium at the United Nations and says, "I smell sulfur." And right after that, he nationalized everything in Venezuela, saved it from these Europeans here in North America who've been raping everybody, pretending to be Americans, going to and fro the earth, devouring nations in the name of Americans, and they're not Americans. And the true Americans, which is y'all, ain't been challenging them. And he nationalized. Sure, they sent agents in there and gave them cancer cells. Now, another nationalization, as an example, was a double agent that they trained in Texas. The tradition of the priesthood here, all these reverends and these Kabbalists, self-made oligarchs under the secret treaty of Verona, claim to be Congress when they're really board of directors for the Circle Church in the Chancery on Fleet Street, England, that did the coup d'etat in 1861. March 27th, they had little whorehouses with little girls 10 to 12 years old, and they liked little boys too. And that's all these so-called Christian ministers and reverends of Isabella. Isabella is what you call Cuba. And that's their little playground like 90 miles off the land of flowers that you call Florida. And they would, just take little girls on the street and rape them. And of course, that's their privilege under the Christian black codes, what they've been doing for generations. It got so bad that women had to come out in the street with broomsticks and stuff trying to protect their little girls and their little boys from these holy roly Christian ministers of North America. Let's say the occupiers of North America, because they ain't Americans. And these politicians. And it got quite ugly. Now the CIA man there, the Christianized converso, was named Batista, who kept things running good for the Christians. It got so ugly they didn't want this stuff out in the real world. And so they trained an agent in Texas to take Batista's place. And so Batista had to sit down. And so they interjected their trained agent in Cuba, but he kind of did a twist on them. And so he told them, Cuba, Isabella is now nationalized. You can take your Christian bullshit, take all your other stuff, pack up, and go home. That agent's name was Fidel Castro. That's why they don't like him. This stuff is not new. Same thing has happened here in the North. It's just that the people of the North really don't understand what Noble Drawley was saying in 1913. It ain't dawned on them yet. He nationalized us and we ain't caught on yet. We keep dealing with some kind of belief system. Looking like it's some kind of belief. When he actually did a political act according to international law. It's just that we're so stagnated here, we don't get it. But the principle is the same all over the world. Who is your mother? The deal of it is that the center of the operations of the Roman order comes from the north. So the greatest work is done here to keep the people as asleep as possible. And the most benefit to the overseers to keep this stuff twisted and distorted is focused here. This is why this information is controversial here more than anywhere else. Not that it doesn't take place around the world, but the launching pad comes from the north, while we're clear. And so the Shriners and the Europeans refer to themselves as the keepers of the North Gate. And this is why you see them in what they call the Mummers Parade on Broad Street and at the battleground. That's designed just like a mosque, which is City Hall in Philadelphia, with Moorish and Ionic architecture. And then you see the Masonic Lodge right there on North Broad Street where George Washington used to open the lodge. And that's where they end the Mummers Parade on January the 1st, because that's when the Alhambra fell. January the 1st, 1492. That ain't the new year. That's the year of Roman conquest of the Moors. Now that's the fact. It's not unknown. The only ones that don't know it is our people that be looking at the parade don't know it's about themselves. It's the truth. And they used to do the first ones in what they call blackface. You can take you right to the museum. You see it. These people are so asleep. And you know who helps keep them asleep? Their own people who have this knowledge that keep playing with them. Or keep trying to control them and only get it if they give them some money. And they don't even give them no money. They don't give Judases no money. And they give them slugs and fiat. They think they get paid. Oh, yes. So this thing is ugly. Why do you think other nationals don't have too much respect for these so-called black leaders? Because they already know this information. And they know that they ain't black. And they keep playing this black nigger game with their own people and act like they don't know that North America is Morocco. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And then it is them same people that condemn people like Noble Raleigh or try to minimize the work that they've done, try to act like it's some kind of belief system, when actually it's the restoration of the estate of the Muslims of the world. That's really what the Moorish movement is really all about. The restoration of a lost estate, the world's largest estate at that. So they keep them thinking it's just a belief system. They're diverted from what's really going on, and they what? Take a passive position, and then they sacrifice the next generation. That's what's been happening. (1913). Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And this is also why they don't teach civics, or why you see a lot of people who claim to love Raleigh say Raleigh didn't teach no civics. Why? They don't want them to look at that Constitution, and they don't want them to study Constitution law. They don't want them to study Marcus Garvey teaching national government principles, and they don't want you to understand the obligations of these people who can claim to be Americans and are not, and that the Republic was overthrown in 1861, and that Lincoln was the last lawful president. And that everyone after that have been operating to keep you in servitude and paying them nigger black leaders to keep this nigger black stuff going on and condemning anybody who tells you this real information. Go ahead, your brother.
I was about to bring up, so the Emancipation Proclamation, that was a coincidence that was done on January 1st as well.
Say it again. You got the microphone?
The Emancipation Proclamation, it was done on January 1st as well. So I was saying that wasn't done on
All that is symbolic. All of that is symbolic of the fall of the Alhambra. And this is why even when Obama and Michelle, went to the Alhambra, he cooked her, which called Egypt, and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. He's giving you the history. Then they come back and they sign the rights of indigenous people for these people to declare their nationality. These people is deep. Let me share something with y'all. I want to share something with you. If you don't mind a minute. Remember when they murdered them brothers and sisters in Philly when they bombed them?
Yep. What's Philly?
Huh? Yes. Yeah. Let me Focus on it, please.
While you're searching,
Go ahead.
while you're searching for that, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Get on the mic, because we're going on the mic while you're. All right.
When you and our other YouTube educators speak, I would like you to put into your lectures that when you say you need to know your mother,
Yes.
if you ask an Albion where they are from or what their nationalities were or what they think they stand, that they're Americans. They don't understand that their mother is this continent, and they don't understand that by nationalizing, they get all the rights.
That's the right of it. Notice how it says inheritance, it says her,
Inherit.
Yes.
because it's all inheritance, even genetic, is traced through the mother.
So I want them to understand that they need to nationalize so they can call this their mother. They can say, I'm American. I'm not.
I thought I had it in that file, and read this to now.
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of asking them.
I had on actually the book that I was bringing up, but actually it's on my other computer that I was telling you about. Now, in just to update you, and I'll make sure that you have that in the future. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring it and put it in a frame and put it on the wall. After they assassinated their brothers and sisters in Philly for not submitting to the Roman order, on Osage Avenue, they literally bombed them. And as a matter of fact, they killed one of their own comrades and blamed that on them. Now, the deal of it is, but after they issued that, they issued a non-pro-tunk instrument. And that non-pro-tunk instrument from the chambers of Philadelphia, because Carpenter's Hall, where the Oddfellows set up to steal the birthright of the Moors. They made a direct call from the Philadelphia chambers for these people called niggers, blacks, colored, etc., free, nationality, etc., name, Moors, right from Philadelphia, right after they murdered them. That's to kind of sue the rest of the civilized world because of that murder. And that information was supposed to be dispensed amongst the people. You think them so-called black leaders exposed that information? No, they did not. Because they all got some version of religion to sell. They don't want these people to know that they're Moors. They don't want to know that their problem is a lack of birthright. They want them to think that they got a lack of belief or a lack of prayer. And thinking that they're going to pray their butts out of this crap. When the real deal is they're under European colonial occupation, with most of their leaders operative or COINTELPRO operatives. I don't care whether they claim to be religious or not. And this is how the Europeans been maintaining control of our people. And they just make sure the ones get paid off, get a few little ducats here and there to think they doing something. You know what I mean? And this is how it works. But I wanted to go. I'll give that to you, and I'll show you the documents right from the chambers of City Hall, because that's where they took your birthright. And so all these so-called leader guys keep on acting like they don't know these people are Moors. They're full of, I don't even argue with them, because I already know that half of them that sold out to the Europeans, he's gonna kill them anyway. Just like, Geronimo, those who, sold out and thought they was doing this man a favor by kissing his keisters on both sides with a straw. They use his bones and skull and bones. That's Geronimo's bones. So after he got everybody, don't battle with the European, then they took his rifle and threw him in the brig, and then after they killed him, they took his bones as they used in skull and bones. Notice, Rome never keeps honor. You know what I mean? So these people can decide that they're going to serve Rome or they're going to honor their mothers and fathers. They're going to fear Allah or they're going to fear this Roman. They've been fearing that Roman, pretending to fear Allah and Jesus. I don't fear nobody but the Lord Jesus. This, they full of crap. They will sell their babies out for, insurance payment. Everybody knows that. Put badges that march all over the place with the help of their fake leaders. Because the issue is the state, the issue is nationality. All that other stuff is tributary. You fix the foundation, the rest of the stuff comes with it. It says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things will be added unto you. They look for finance, a job, get paid. They ain't getting paid because this man's controlling their estate. So they try to rape each other rather than have the courage to take a position solid and help get the estate back. They won't have to worry about no fiat. But they're selfish. But it's all right. There will be a few amongst the youth that will come up. That's why they say the truth going to come from the mouth of babes. Because most of these people are so damn contaminated, they ain't going to do nothing for these people. They only looking to line their own pockets, pretending to love their people. But that doesn't matter because nature's not going to let them get away with it. Not this time. Not this time. They're going to enjoy the little rides for a few minutes. They got this going on. This government shut down because they ain't got no finance, that's why. And ain't nobody buying their T-bonds that they set up since the Civil War after they closed the Freedmen's Bureau in 1868 and converted person into their private corporation to steal the estates of the Moors, because that's the fact. That's where your person, corporate issue comes from. And that's the fact. They won't. Go ahead, good brother. Give me the mic.
Yeah, can you touch on the age of Aquarius we're entering now?
Well, in the prophet's literature, how many read Prophet Nostradamus' literature or religious controversy? That article where he talks about the sun stands at high noon and yet the people cannot see it. Are you familiar with that? So in the literature, in the Moorish Temple of Science, you see in the literature, you'll have an article called Religious Controversy. And read it, and you'll see that the phrase where it says, the sun stands at high noon, and yet the people can't see. What it really means is, like say for instance, like you see this shadow. If this light, well, it's not a good demonstration. Like say if this light was uncovered, right? And whichever direction that the light is, if I go from the east to the west, you'll see the casting of a shadow, right? And what that symbolizes in the transits of the sun, that you're standing at high noon, that means you're standing right beneath the sun. And so that means it casts no shadow. That means there shall be nothing hidden, no stone unturned. All things that were hidden shall be in the open. That means did not understand that nature herself will speak to them and open up their minds and open up their chambers, and they will not be blinded. And that these thieves and parasites who've been sucking on them in the name of Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, the Brahmin priests, all of them will be sat down, and some of them will be lynched, like they've been lynching people in the name of their different versions of lords, while really hating the prophets themselves anyway. They just use the prophets' names for profit. Do you understand what I'm saying? Most of them ain't moral. Excuse me. That's my sister, make sure I'm all right. Excuse me just a minute. Yeah. I'm all right. I'm all right, sis. I'm doing class. All right. All right, Mom. I'm fine. I ain't got no fever either. All right. All right, Mama. It's my sister. Anyway, you know, the deal of it is, and you know, I can't emphasize this enough, and you know, I wish no harm on anyone, but the priesthood have been hiding is because they've been hiding behind Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, and Muhammad. And people are looking everywhere else but at the demons themselves, really standing behind the pole pit. You know what I mean? And see, the dark priesthood always tells you certain truths, but he tells you in a coded ways. That's to take the karmic debt off of him. But anyway, in the Aquarian, so when you're dealing with the energies of the different gates, you know, like you look in the book of Revelation, and it'll say there was 3 in the north, 3 in the east, 3 in the west, and 3 in the south. It's talking about the gates, the 12 gates. The 12 gates are actually the 12 cycles of the constellations that govern this particular solar system. Now, in the Piscean energy, this is where you have what they call I believe. And so the priesthood could get away with pumping beliefs as facts when beliefs are conjecture. But in the age of Aquarius, or in the light of Aquarius, is I know. And this is where humanity is being swept or cleansed. And so this is where you have the symbol of Aquarius having that water. He called it water bearer. So the Aquarius pours the water, or that's where you get the baptism. And so the baptism, and so the priesthood can't do their dirt anymore. And it has nothing to do with what anybody believes. It has everything to do with the workings of heaven. And so the priesthood know they have no power over that. And all the little niggers that they paid off, conversos, to help keep their people asleep for a few pieces of slugs, they don't even give them silver no more. They'll be the first to be sacrificed. You know, they think because they've been feeding Rome, that Rome will let them off. Their first food. You ever heard of retirement homes for overseers and nigger marcher guys? No, what they got is graves, misery, character assassination, and all the rest. They've been better off just telling the truth from the beginning. And, you know, because when they used up, they kill them anyway. So just tell the truth. You know, how you say, don't threaten to take the door off the refrigerator. I mean, I'm going to open the refrigerator and I'm getting ready to tell. Take them hinges off through the doorway. Because they're going to do it to you anyway. Well, if you tell the truth, you know they've been doing it to you for generations. So don't talk about what they're going to do. They've been doing it. These punks going all around them. You know, it's sickening when you really start, you know, when you're looking at the history of our people, and they don't even make movies like Red Tails and all that stuff where these brothers, you know, nobody respects them, so they flies these planes. You remember the Red Tails, the movie? And so every war, we go in there and beat everybody's keisters, and then come home and get treated like shit, and then want to march all over the place because we ain't getting no niggas. Shit, let him go fight his own shit. I bet you he would have lost. And if he lost, he daggone sure wouldn't be in control of your stuff. You know, but our people so busy serving Rome, faking like they love Jesus, God, and Allah, they're full of crap, and they're dangerous. That's why nobody trusts them. And then we wonder why the rest of the world don't respect us. No, because we're hypocrites. And we're so busy feeling sorry for ourselves because of our mistreatment that we fail to really examine our history and what we've been doing. You know, our people done shed blood all around the world keeping this man in power. and then coming back and marching and praying and feeling sorry for themselves because they get neglected. Well, they help take freedom from everybody else. It's called reciprocity. That's a rule in nature. Or what is called cause and effect. Something like that. Well, because they've been serving that Roman that they keep complaining about. They won't buy or sell. What's your name? They won't say Muhammad. They won't say Il, Bey. All they don't say Smith, Jones. Yeah, that's who you are? Oh, you Dred Scott, huh? That's why they ain't got no damn rights. Anyway, any more questions? So the Aquarian age is really the age cosmologically. That means the writings of the heavens that I know. And this is mainly the time for them to see, whether they want to see or whether they don't want to see. Give it a mic.
And so just to add to that, there's a scripture in the Bible, and I'll just paraphrase it, where Jesus, Yeshua is asked or telling his disciples that he's about to go. And they're asking him, what are we going to do without you? And he says to them, go over into the next town. There you will find a man bearing a water pot. Follow him. That is the symbol,
Procession of
equinox for the change astrologically, cosmologically, from the Piscean age to Aquarian. And now most people probably didn't pick it up. But one of the things, say I studied when I went to college for theology was, Hebrew manners and customs. So if you knew customarily what was wrong with that, the scenario is that women, not men, carried the water. So the fact that they were supposed to go into the next town and they were moved into the next, age, because he said, I'll be with you even to the end of the age, which some people try to say was the end of the world, but that's just an age, a period, an epoch of time. So that was a sign. Wait a minute, man bearing a water pot. And that's the symbol of, like he said, the Aquarian, the water bearer. Because women, woman at the well, women carried water, not men. So
yes.
that was symbology that was hidden there. You had to know that that's what it meant. The other thing that they put in the Bible was the scripture that talks about there's going to come a great falling away. They talk about the apocalypse, of course, and apocalyptic only means a revealing. They made it seem like it was going to be some cataclysmic, because we've had cataclysmic ages in times past,
yes.
where there was wars in the heavenlies, and they was shooting, and doing all kinds of nuclear war way before we came back this time. But they were saying there was going to be a great falling away. Well, people we were teaching that as a falling away from the so-called faith. But the reality is that it's almost a falling away of the scales from the people's eyes, so that they begin to see things. It says, now we see in a glass darkly, but there's coming a time when you're going to be able to see as it is. All this is in the scripture, and all of this is pretty much prophetic as to the times that we're in and entering into now. But when you're in the thick of it under a dogmatic spell, you don't see it that way.
Yes, and this is also where when Yeshua said that he's going to leave, and they say, well, if you go away, how will we know God? He said, I go to my Father, and you will see me no more. And now Rams keep telling him that he's coming back, but what he's really meaning is these are cycle ages. And that's what it actually means. But God is the ephemeral mathematical transits, the eclipses of the sun, etc., that will bring in the new age, or what they call the coming again of the Son of Light. And this is where he also said, I go away, but I will send a comforter unto you, which he's telling you that there's another prophet coming after him. But what it really means, this is the way things work, if you get the point. But the people, by virtue of the way the priesthood would teach you, kept looking at them as absolute personalities of men. in the sense when actually there's errors of time and energy, although they will be represented by men and women, it is actually the workings of nature. And it will reflect in men and women because that's what made us. You know, and so this is how governments are actually run. And so this is why they always watch the womb. And this is why those who really understand the science always murder children. Or you see them constantly having these wars and you think they're just doing it. No, that's human sacrifice. You know, they're keeping the world unstable so that they can rule. Are we clear? You know, so it looks like they're doing something else, but the target is really targeting that womb. That's the real deal. So issue is who's your mother. You know, even you see the story of the sacrifice, you know, where they're arguing about the baby and they're going to chop him in half, type stuff. You know, these people are wicked. You know, and they be talking about this holy roll. These people are wicked. And 90% of them hide in the priesthood. That's how they've been getting this thing off all these generations. And even the politicians, who the people think is a different subject, they all priests. All of them politicians and every president for the United States is a Knight of Malta. That's a fact. What these people going to tell you about the politics? That's why they change these people into their vessels, human into their private bodily instruments. That's why you need a passport. That's a ship, not a person, not a living man, woman. And those who love Rome submit to that without a fight. And we should be solving these problems rather than keep submitting to Rome and selling out the next generation with our egos. That's what we keep doing. Because we don't have the courage to really face Rome, because they fear Rome. They don't fear no principles. They ain't got no damn principles. They'll sell your babies out in the tomorrow for $5. They will. Acting like they got principles. They don't have principles. That's why we're at this generation, 2019, with the same problems, and some of the worst. However, we are honored with a few brave men and women around the planet that have been challenging Rome and not buying their T-bonds. So their stuff is collapsing because these punks here ain't got the courage to really carry out the law. And that's the truth. And so this is why Trump is saying some things he's saying and people think he's out to lunch. He's not out to lunch. And the so-called shutdown is because ain't nobody buying their T-bonds. And after 30 days, they're going to have to start liquidating a lot of these alphabet soup agencies. And that's really the truth. And this whole fence thing is a front because they ain't got no fiat any damn way. And Trump, with his honor to the degree that he has, are trying to force them to bring businesses back to the shores or it's over totally for them. Meanwhile, we're supposed to be getting our act together. But we still trying to kiss his butt. That's what our problem with our people is, when we should have been working with this information since 1913. Now, that's the real deal. And the fact that we're still breathing, that means it ain't too late. However, we're still late, if you get the point where I'm coming from. My position is I'm more interested in the generations to come. You know, the ones that here don't want it, fine. Give the next ones a chance, because we have sold out enough generations with our fake belief systems that don't damn admit it. And that is the truth. So you're going to need new minds that are uncontaminated, that can take the information with honor and willingly, not because of a few pieces of silver, honor their mothers and fathers, that the days may be longer upon this earth of their estate that has been robbed by these foreign Europeans pretending to be Americans. That's making these people pay to travel on their own land, and they won't even tell their own children. Go ahead and get a license from him. It was kiss Rome's ass to get along. And that's why this corruption exists today, because they got nerve to go fight wars, don't they? They got nerves to kill, 360, 150 something 51. How many, Severe, how many deaths was in Philly just this last year? About 351, 360?
Yes?
Homicides, yeah, just this year.
I ain't been.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, I'm talking about
The highest in the decade.
homicides, yeah. I'm just saying,
Three something.
you know, just the other night, few people got killed, 2 people here, right on Pine Street. Shot up there,
Highest in 10 years.
right up here. You know about that?
Since the year
I'm
started.
here on 22nd.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the deal of it is, the point of it is that the people who've created all these conditions go unscathed.
Yeah.
And these people, none of these people here should be poor and don't know that they should be poor. We're not promoting laziness. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? They don't even know that they're on their own land and their misery and their suffering because these foreign Europeans are stealing all of their resources and targeting their families with the Christian black codes.
That's the problem.
They won't address the problem because they don't have the courage to address the problem. They want to march and pray.
But that's the leader guys. The
Yeah,
people that are marching and praying,
and 90%
they
of
don't
them,
know.
90% of them are Masons, got a Moorish fez in secret, got a nice comfortable job and pretend you don't know these people are Moors. And these mothers of the church are matrons, Eastern Stars. You know, I mean, this stuff is, these corrupt, these demons are standing behind the pulpit and pretending they don't understand, like they gotta pray, you know, like, give me $5, make it 10, you know, they'll increase the vibration of the prayer. You know, they're full of it. You know, and they've been doing this stuff for generations and they're getting away with this stuff and they're entrenched. And all they gotta say is God or Jesus, and these people start pouring out their fiat that should be going to their children in their homes. And their families are breaking up. Men have the secret anger at their wives because of this crap, and they don't have the courage to have honest conversations. These are full, you know, this is stuff is ugly. You know, so we need a few pure hearts to come. We need a few pure hearts, you know, just to be vibrated. Because the champions that change the world are only a handful, always only have been. But they need to be stimulated, that's all.
I wake up every young person I come across.
Yeah.
Everyone. Send them out here.
Because it's going to have to come from them. Because most of these people are so damn contaminated. You know, they think they're righteous, but they're full of it. You know what I mean? They're full of it. And the deal of it is, you know, you don't argue with them, just keep it moving. You know, always say, each one teach one, tell somebody that doesn't know, and sooner or later you'll hit a jewel. Sooner or later you'll hit a jewel. And pray good that some of these young sisters catch on, that are not contaminated, and that uterus start ringing, and they come with a pure mind, pure heart, they bring them champions here, then it's really over for Rome, and their nigger leaders too. Then that same sword that they've been taking everybody else's head with will be taking their heads off. This is where it's symbolized in the Quran, where Muhammad, you know, takes off the Caesar's head. That's that symbol too. And so Muhammad comes to complete the cycle of Yeshua. And that's where that symbol comes from. And so now they come with the Holy Quran. Quran means sun reader. That's what that book is. Spookiness, cures will come, and it is already in you. It's just that someone has to smack us around a little bit to stimulate that memory, the same way that that sperm stimulates that egg. But then, if there's not an honorable sperm around, you have what is called in the ancient world Pythagorean temples. And this is where women with a more pure heart could stimulate their own eggs without the sun. This is where you get what they call the virgin mothers. And it occurs on rare occasions. And usually they come here, they're really masterminds. And they usually put it in the sun because the energy is in a woman, but they'll put it in the sun because they're sending the sun out there as a projection to do the work. So this is why, if you really understand how nature works, there ain't no good man without a good woman behind him. Because that is the key to civilization, period. So the key is, who's your mother? And do you know who your mother is? And do you honor your mother and your father? Your mother and your father. And so the deal with it is we've lost our inheritances because we stopped honoring our mothers and our fathers, and we gave up our culture and started following the idol god systems, blaming it on Jesus, God, and Allah, and Moses, and Muhammad, who had nothing to do with the crap that they made after they got rid of them. So the people that ran Yeshua out is the same people that are going to tell you about what Jesus did. Same people that ran Prophet Muhammad out are going to tell you about what he said. They're the same people that ran him out. They even celebrate him running. Please. You know, people are extreme. Hypocrisy is, they polish hypocrisy, and that hypocrisy has become their religion. And because there's so many hypocrites, they feel good about themselves. And that's what's wrong with the planet. So who's your mother? Anyway, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Dr. Naila, will you come and share some information about our good sister, Zuriakis? It'd be better if you come.
Won't you come?
Because then we have that female energy too.
Yes, please. We have to speak.
For those of you, many of you who remember, who was used to come here, our good friend Zuriakis. She passed on a few years ago, and we had a ceremony here. You know, these are some of her works.
And just let you know that we have Islam. We have a couple of her works here available here at the House of Reawakening Minds. Some of you, I know some people see the video. There's a video of her teaching on astrology, and we were. She left she left these with me. She domiciled with me. Able to finally now we have copies of these two works. So if anyone is interested, she has Rites of Passage for Moorish Americans, and it's the Universal Medicine for the Soul. Says is the supreme reason and absolute justice for the mind, mathematical and practical truth for the body, the quintessence, a combination of light and gold, supplies the human mind with an instrument of philosophical and religious certainty, exact as the mathematics and accounting for the infallibility of mathematics themselves. And that's this book. And then The Children of the Moon, it's curing emotional security through your moon sign. So if you all are interested in that, please let us know. We're just going to probably, Sister Karen, we're going to take pre-orders on these books. But we have a few here tonight if you're interested. But we will make these available. And this is a treasure to have. I know there was one brother that contacted me about a couple weeks ago and asked me if I knew how to get in contact with her.
He didn't know that
because he had a gift for her, and
he didn't know that
she transitioned in 2012. So, but these are two of her works, and we will have them here available at House of Reawakening Minds. We want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and also want to say thank you to our viewing audience. We certainly do appreciate you. Excuse me, if you do get a chance, please come and support us. Come in person. We have the most amazing lecturers here. Next week we're going to have Brother Aaron L., who's going to be teaching on For Friday about writs. A lot of you have issues with your writs, and he's our resident writ expert, and he'll be here on For Fridays beginning this month, weather permitting. So we want to again thank Sister Tamara behind the camera. Oh, that rhymes. Tamara behind the camera, and each one of you who came out, and those of you with a pretty big audience, and those of you who didn't get your questions asked, if you or online, you would email us at houseofreawakeningminds@gmail.com. We'll try to get those addressed. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Have a good night. Remember, we love it. Not deliberately, just because I